everyone. I'm so glad to see you today, and I hope you are having an awesome week so far. I think we'll start with 4-7-8 breathing just because it's really good for us to do, and I want to practice it more often myself. So remember, 4-7-8 breathing is you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 7, and you breathe out for 8. And I'm going to use this visual so you can see the timing of all of that. If you are experiencing anxious teens or anxious kids in your home, I'm sure that you needed to take that breath today. It is a very challenging situation to be in. My daughter had anxiety all of her growing up years, though most of the time I had no idea. I mean, there were challenging things that happened, but I didn't associate it with anxiety. And it wasn't all the time. So I know some of you are experiencing a lot more than I ever did. But part of my mission, part of my job is to help teens be able to deal with that, but also help parents with that as well. And even though I work one-to-one with teens and young people on their anxiety, I know that the parents really need help too, and you need to have some direction and things to do. And so I'm actually going to be doing a parent book study right before school starts. I think is when I'm going to be ready to open that up and have parents working with me as kind of like a resource. I'm going to invite the parents that I'm already working with their teens, but I'm also going to open it up to everyone else. So just be thinking about that. If you are like, oh, I'd like to be part of a book study to learn more about what I can do as a parent and how to best deal with a child with anxiety, I can't wait to get started on it. I actually, I'm reading it right now as I'm getting ready for the book study. And several of these episodes are going to be about stuff I learned in here because it was really good. But the book is Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. And it is Reed Wilson, PhD, and Lynn Lyons, LICSW. So there's so much good stuff in here. And so I'm looking forward to unpacking it with parents, but I'm also really enjoying it myself because even though my kids aren't at home anymore, I have grandkids now. And I know that because anxiety, every person has anxious thoughts. Every person has uncomfortable emotions, which is really why anxiety causes us so much troubles because it's uncomfortable and we want to get rid of it. And so all the stuff that I'm learning, I can still practice it as a grandma. So I'm really excited about that. But our anxious kids, our anxious teens want to avoid things. They want to avoid school. They want to avoid tests, homework, new situations, a new school year, starting a sport, dating, driving. There's so many things, getting a job. There's so many things that our anxious kids don't want to do because it makes them feel uncomfortable when they think about doing that thing. And then we're parents and we love them so much and we don't want them to feel anything uncomfortable or we don't want them to have any challenges. Now, I say that in the fact that I realize, and I realize most of you do too, that they need these challenges to learn new skills. But ultimately, if we could really get rid of everything that makes them sad, everything that hurts them, everything that doesn't feel good, we would want to because we love them so much. And so the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, this is not a shame you parents for doing these things because there's certainly things that I've done before and there are things that probably most parents do sometimes because we just don't know what to do when we have anxious teens or anxious kids. I mean, the book, I don't know if there's any age limit on it because it's anxious kids. I think it's talking about anybody, probably kindergarten up. And I, work with the teens, but these things that I'm going to be talking about really fit for any parent who has kids at home that experience some anxious things and uncomfortableness where they're wanting to avoid things. And when they want to avoid things, Unfortunately, as parents, we do a lot of things that actually support the avoidant behavior instead of help them learn new skills to get through it. And that's because we're trying to protect them. So one of the things I said already is that parents just don't know what to do. Like, we haven't been taught how do we deal with anxious things. And we probably think back to our own upbringing where our parents said, don't worry about it, buck up, stop crying or stop worrying about it and just go do the thing. And I said those things too, like, well, so what? Just get to school anyway, or don't worry about it, or whatever. And we do need to be pushing them, but I didn't give my kids enough chance to actually feel their own feelings and validate that they have validating that they had those feelings. Sometimes we don't have time to validate their feelings, but it is important for them to know that what they are feeling, no matter what it is, no matter how ridiculous we think it is, it's important to them. And we need to show that we care that it's important to them. So a lot of times when your child has reached the top of their anxiety and they're crying, screaming, throwing fits, being physically aggressive, we don't know what to do. And we don't know how to make them do what we're wanting them to do, so we just give up on that. And another reason why we a lot of times support their avoidant behavior is because it works temporarily. And I want to make sure you understand the temporarily part. So if your child is fighting about going to school and you're just like, whatever, just stay home, then they immediately de-escalate because now they don't have to go. And so it works because they've stopped having a fit. But tomorrow, school's going to come up again. And then here we are again with the fits. And then we say, oh, well, forget it. And then they get what they want and so on. And then we're building this terrible cycle of them not having to do the things that they're trying to avoid. And so, that's another reason why we're kind of modeling or supporting the avoidant behaviors. And the other is we may be an anxious person. If we grew up with a lot of anxiety ourselves, if we still have a lot of anxiety and we know how uncomfortable that is and we're always trying to avoid being uncomfortable, then we're really trying to protect our kids from that uncomfortable feeling because we can't tolerate it ourselves. And when I think about the growing up for my kids, that one doesn't fit for me because of course I get uncomfortable doing new things, but it's never stopped me from doing things. I've always been somebody who's sort of powered through that. But I know that there are some parents who probably can't tolerate that feeling because they've been avoiding those feelings for a while, and maybe their anxiety is a lot stronger than other people's. And so they're having a hard time dealing with that. So then they're modeling how to not deal with it by not allowing or not having their kids deal with it. So again, we want our kids to feel good and have a nice life and not throw fits and not try to avoid things. And because we're loving them and trying to help them so much, sometimes we're helping them too much. But as parents, we need to be helping our kids develop skills where they can deal with challenges, they can deal with stressful situations, they can deal with feeling uncomfortable inside their bodies and still do the thing that they want to do. Because sometimes anxiety is stopping them from doing things they truly want to do. Other times, anxiety is stopping them from doing things they don't really want to do anyway. So it's a great excuse like, oh, well, I don't want to go to school anyway. I feel kind of uncomfortable. I'm just going to not go to school. And we have to be helping our kids from the very beginning, even as toddlers, feeling uncomfortable feelings, validating that everyone feels uncomfortable feelings, and helping them work through where they go forward and do the thing that we want them to do or do the thing that they should be doing or want to do, even though they feel uncomfortable. Nothing has gone wrong if they feel uncomfortable. When we do all the problem solving and the escaping for them, then they never learn how to deal with those things. And maybe that works while they're at home because we can always circumvent all the challenges and not make them do anything that they want to do. But if we want them to move out of our house and be independent adults in the world, they're not going to know how to deal with anything. They're not going to be able to leave our house in a comfortable way because we haven't allowed them to learn how to deal with challenges. So I want to talk to you about those pitfalls that are creating this continued cycle of anxiety in your home. And you may see yourself in some of these, all of these, none of these. I'd love to hear from you. Please put in the comments or send me an email or something and tell me about what you're experiencing. But one of the pitfalls, or some of the pitfalls, are rescuing, reassuring, and overprotecting. So again, this is like anytime your child doesn't want to do something or they feel uncomfortable about something, instead of helping them work through that and moving forward to do the thing, we just take it off the table. We just don't make them go to it or do it. And I remember this in small ways with my kids. Like, I remember in first grade, my son tore up a textbook because he was mad about something. I don't remember. I think he was grounded, and he tore some pages or erased holes in pages in his textbook that the school owned. And I found it laying there all messed up. And I said, you're going to tell your teacher about what you did. I'm not going to call her and tell her, hey, Jake tore this up. I want you to do it. And that's a very uncomfortable thing for anyone to do, especially a first grader, to call your teacher, talk to them on the phone and say, hey, by the way, I tore up a textbook. And he would probably have to pay for it, or there'd be some, maybe he wouldn't go to recess or something. I don't know. And I made him talk on the phone to this teacher about that he tore this book up. I also wanted my kids to be volunteers somewhere, and they got to choose where they volunteered. Now, we lived in a small town, so there wasn't a lot of choices. If you live in a big town, you'll have a lot of choices of these things, but I wanted them to experience volunteering and doing something nice for other people. But when I took them to the place where they wanted to volunteer, they had to go in on their own and talk to whatever adult was in charge. They had to find that adult and they had to talk to them about them wanting to do the volunteer job. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't support them before and after they talked, when they got out of the car, when they got back in the car. I role played with them about how you would talk to an adult, how you would find the adult, because those are things they don't know. But if we are going ahead and just doing all that stuff for them and they don't ever have to feel uncomfortable, they're not ever learning what it's like to feel nervous when you go into a new place and you've got to find the adult that you need to talk to. You need to figure out what you're going to say to them. And that feels, I still don't like that feeling sometimes when I have to go do those things. But if I didn't know how to do it, I couldn't run my adult life. I couldn't have the things that I have now because I would be too scared to do that. Then we have some parents providing certainty. Now, I don't think I had to do this too much with my kids, but when we have really anxious kids and they want to know everything about, well, what's it going to be like when I go there? What is the menu when I go there? What are people going to be watching on TV when I go there? What are, they want to know all the things so that they can feel comfortable to go to that new experience. Or if it's a new school or the next new school year, who are all the teachers going to be and is everything going to be at and what will happen in all my classes? And not that we shouldn't help them a little bit in that area. Like, as a school counselor, we had anxious kids coming from the middle school to the high school. And so what I would talk to parents about is, yes, come into the school during the summertime. Our school was open, I think, almost all summer. And our principal offered a walkthrough every Friday. And it was just posted on social media, hey, come between 10 and 12 or whatever, and we'll give you a tour and we'll walk you through. And that happened every Friday. So kids could decide, on that day or these several days, especially anxious kids, I would tell their parents, come as many times as you would like to, where they could walk the halls, they could see where classes were, they could see what things looked like. And so then when they actually started school, then they would feel comfortable. So that seems like a very reasonable thing, that you're You're anticipating the anxiety. You're like, oh, yep, we're going to be anxious, and that's okay. And let's practice this a little bit. Let's walk around. Let's try to figure out where things are so that you feel good when you come here. We're not you have to go there, but let's make it as comfortable as possible. Now, that's not providing complete certainty because we still don't know what is the first day going to be like, what are the teachers going to be like, we don't know. And so sometimes you just have to say to your child, I don't know what the first day is going to be like. I don't know what your teachers are going to be like. I don't know what the lunchroom is like, but that's okay because you're going to figure out how to do that. Have a friend, maybe a friend is going to walk with you, or maybe find the friendly people and say, hey, I don't know how to get my lunch. Do you guys know how to do that or whatever? And you figure those things out. So some of that is going to be uncertain, and that's okay. And we shouldn't be providing complete certainty about everything because we can't anyway. I think about this so often. My daughter's biggest fear and anxiety when she was in elementary school was that I was going to die. Now, I didn't know that for sure, but she would say things like, I don't want you to go on that airplane, you might die, or I don't want you to stay overnight at something because I think you might die. And I couldn't say to her, oh, I'm not going to die. Now, it seems like that's what we should say because that would make our child feel better. Oh, don't worry about it, we're not going to die. But I knew that wasn't true. I have no idea when I'm going to die. And I also wanted her to know that there is that uncertainty in the world. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and that's okay. We're going to enjoy now. We're going to do all the things that we can do to be safe and to care about our health, but we don't know what's going to happen. We can't control all these other things. And the reason that we don't want to provide certainty is because it gives you a false sense of control that you really don't have. And so when they finally see they don't have that control, it can actually make it worse because they've been kind of given this false certainty and then they realize that they don't have it. And so always just being open with them that we don't know what the next part is. No one is a fortune teller. Also, identifying your child as a worrier because it runs in the family. Using that kind of, yes, anxiety does run in families. And I feel like my daughter has anxiety because I think her dad has anxiety. I probably did some anxious things while she was growing up. And I believe my dad had anxiety. And so, yes, genetically, people can be predisposed to anxiety, and that people in the family maybe very much do have anxiety, or maybe everyone's taking medication for anxiety. Even if that's true, identifying as someone who has anxiety or saying, well, we can't do anything about it because we just have anxiety in our family is not helpful because anxiety is very treatable. And every person who has anxiety can pretty much manage it in a way to have a very fulfilling life. And if we almost give our kids this crutch that, oh, well, don't worry about it, there's nothing you can do about it, then they also don't have the mindset where they can fix that for themselves and they can manage it and that it's going to be okay. And so making sure that you don't make your family identify as the anxious family or that's our anxious kid. Also requiring family members, friends, and schools to accommodate anxiety. Now, again, I had special education students. My whole entire education career, I had kids that had IEPs and needed accommodations for all sorts of things, and anxiety was one of them. And I'm not saying that schools shouldn't accommodate for anxiety. I'm just saying that some parents want the school to do, like the child to have no challenges and no stress and no anxiety ever, or they're requiring everyone in their family to do certain things so the child has no challenges or no anxiety. That's not good for your child. Again, they have to experience challenges and feel stress and anxiety because everyone does, and be able to deal with it. Now, if there's certain things, like I was talking about, coming to the school a lot of extra times before school actually starts, so you feel more comfortable. Or maybe some kids needed to have breaks to not be stimulated all the time, and that's totally fine. And those kinds of things are okay. But just make sure that you're not over accommodating in every way and making everyone make all these accommodations, because your child needs to be able to navigate uncertainty. Allowing bad behavior like swearing, tantrums, and hitting because it's part of their anxiety. Now, anxiety does create a fight response in some people, and it is like it's just triggered and they're all of a sudden in this fight mode. But if you are working with your child on working and managing their anxiety, you would be talking them through that, not allowing them to hit you, scream obscenities, tear things up, break things, all the kinds of things that sometimes parents allow their kid to do because they're like, oh, well, that's because they're anxious. We still have to expect certain behaviors out of them. And we can say, I totally understand you being upset, but here are the things that we're going to do to help manage that. Because when someone's behavior is out of control, it's because they don't have the skills to manage those uncomfortable feelings. And we want them to have the skills. So we need to be teaching the skills to manage uncomfortable feelings at the very beginning. Like I said, I have grandkids and 2 of them are toddlers. And toddlers are just starting to experience these really big emotions and they have no idea how to deal with them. Now, tantrums in a toddler is different because we still can't talk them through all of that stuff. But we can still be modeling for them that they don't hit us and they don't bite us and they don't tear things up. And I've witnessed my daughter especially, she will ask my grandson, do you need a hug? Because hugs are regulating. And he may not want it right away, but he soon comes to her and wants a hug. Or sometimes she'll just hold on to him lightly around the shoulders and say, let's take some deep breaths, because deep breathing is self-regulating. And so she's modeling, because he doesn't understand how to do that. She's talking it through and modeling it for him as he's experiencing it. And so by the time, if you're doing that, by the time your child is a teenager, they already have some of these skills on how to self-regulate. And maybe you might have to remind them how to do those things, but not allowing them to just be terrors because they have anxiety. And if you are a person who has anxiety, if you are not managing your anxiety well and you are out of control, if you are having panic attacks because things are happening, if you're just losing control of yourself when you're stressed, then you're showing your child that anxiety can't be managed and that anxiety controls you and not that you control anxiety. And so if you do have some anxious behaviors, please try to get those under control for yourself, because then you will, once you're getting those under control, then you can also be modeling how to control that and how to manage that with your child. And some parents are pushing too hard, becoming angry and explosive at their kids when they're having these anxiety issues and they're not managing their anxiety well. And we cannot regulate other people unless we are regulated. And so if you are out of control and becoming explosive or angry or yelling at everyone in your home, then your children aren't going to be able to manage their anxiety because everything is just too chaotic and explosive. So again, get those things under control for yourself, and then you will be able to help your child manage the same things. So I want you to ask yourself the question, have you addressed your own anxiety? What coping strategies do you need to learn? And how can you do it with your teen? Wouldn't that be great as a kind of relationship building activity, is that you're learning techniques for your own self. And there's plenty of parent coaches out there and just coaches in general, or even a therapist if that's what you need, to try to figure out how to manage your own anxiety and then do that with your child. That would be, I think, the most healing and helpful thing that you could do with your anxious child. So I want to hear from you. Are any of these behaviors happening in your family? Ask me questions, send me any messages, and sign up for, well, it's not time to sign up for my parent book study yet, but definitely sign up for it when it's time. We'll be talking about these things. And I will be having workshops probably at least once a month. So sign up for those. We can be talking about things there and you can bring your questions there. And I will talk to you soon.